तो ते असं झालं की अरे यार क्वेश्चनमध्ये विचारलं आणि देन आय गॉट कन्फ्युज. हे पॉझिटिव्ह वेने होतं की निगेटिव्ह वेने होतं. सो दॅट
Uh,
हॅपन्ड.
that happens most of the times, but yeah, that's where our practice tests help. Once you are practicing, you understand where you need to focus, where you don't need to focus. And the way I told you, for listening especially, we need to keep in mind, even if we are not paying, even if we are not making notes. So this is also a debatable topic. Okay, some people say, many people say that when I am writing, I cannot focus on whatever is being said. Okay, and that happens a lot. You cannot, like, when you're writing, you cannot focus on what the other person is saying. Okay, or whatever you're listening. So that totally depends on you. If you ask me, I am a very active listener. Even if I don't make notes, I can remember everything that I have heard, at least for those 5 minutes to answer those 5 questions. Okay,
ओके.
but some people, I had one student, he used to write down everything that the person is saying, and still he used to remember everything that is being said, because that was his way of paying attention. Okay, so
करेक्ट.
the way I said, you need to introspect and you need to understand what kind of a person you are, and that's how you will decide on what you need to do. Okay, but make that decision, I would say. So if you feel that, okay, you're, when you're making notes, you're getting distracted, yeah, make very few notes. Don't make
ओके.
very exhaustive notes, but pay attention to what is being said, because you hardly get 5 questions. It's not very hard to remember whatever is being said. And once you keep, now as we start practicing also on listening, and as you do your mock test also, as you give your mock test also, you will understand की काय points important आहेत आणि काय points important नाही आहेत. ठीक है? We don't need very minor details. We need major details of whatever is being said. Correct? And as we look at question types also, you will understand what are the types of questions that will come. So we don't need very minor details. Okay? So that's what should help you understand what needs to be noted down and what can be ignored. Okay? But my main thing is pay attention to the audio. Do active listening. Active listening is pay attention. Don't just focus on your writing on taking notes. ठीक आहे, बिकॉज आपले ते नोट्स बघायला कोणी येणार नाही आहे. वी आर नॉट गेटिंग पॉईंट्स फॉर दोज नोट्स की किती आपण चांगले नोट्स बनवतो. रफ सगळं नाही आहे मॅथ्समधल्या. ठीक आहे, सो बी माइंडफुल अबाउट दॅट पार्ट ऑल्सो. नाव ॲज विल बी डुईंग लिसनिंग ऑल्सो, ट्राय टू मेक फ्यू नोट्स. ठीक आहे, when we do our mocks over here. Yeah. Okay, let's start with listening then. We have not looked at types of questions in listening that we have. Again, in listening, we have three main types of questions, that is, listening for basic comprehension, listening for pragmatic understanding, understanding what the other person is trying to say, okay, not just the explicit meaning of it, and connecting and synthesizing information, okay, being able to relate with the ideas over here, I would say. Now we know that listening for basic comprehension is understanding the main ideas, major points, and the important details that we have. Then listening for pragmatic understanding is understanding the speaker's attitude and degree of certainty that he or she is trying to say, and of course understanding the function and the purpose of what the speaker is trying to say. ठीक आहे, तिथे तो एक क्वेश्चन बघितला असेल, वाय डज द प्रोफेसर से दिस. करेक्ट, दॅट इज युअर this type of question, pragmatic understanding question. And then of course connecting and synthesizing information, understanding the relationships between the various ideas presented in your audio and being able to draw conclusions based on the inferences. That's what we are going to look at with each question type. Okay, now we know that you get around 3 lectures and 2 conversations. Okay, your lectures will be say 3 to 5 minutes long, and your conversations can be around 3 minutes long. You will get 6 questions per lecture and 5 questions per conversation. Okay, so overall you get 28 questions and you have 36 minutes to solve these questions. Okay, now most of these questions will be multiple choice questions, that you have 4 options and you select one correct answer, but sometimes they might ask you to select 2 also. Okay, so that's where you pay attention to the instructions on the screen. Sometimes questions will ask you to put some events in order or steps in a process. Okay, that is where your elaborative notes will be useful for us. And sometimes they might ask you to just say match objects or text to categories which are given in the table. So that's some type of a question, but usually ना multiple choices येतात. हा एखाद question येतो. ठीक है. uh, Here you know that the lectures in our TOEFL IBT, which is our test, will reflect the kind of listening and speaking that actually occurs in the classroom when you will be there. Okay. Now, in some of the lectures, I've already told you, in some of the lectures, you might come across just the lecturer speaking. In some of the lectures, you might come across even the students are speaking. Okay, that's where you will need to pay more attention, I would say. Sometimes they might be just discussing among some things. Okay, and there might be some photos also on the picture, like on the screen, which might come up. So during your listening, you will also need to pay attention to the screen in the actual test. Okay, many times when you come across some words which you might not be familiar with, say some literary words, some psychological words which you are not familiar, because that's not your domain, correct? So they will appear on your screen. ठीक आहे. सो पे अटेन्शन टू द स्क्रीन ऑल्सो. आपल्या मॉक टेस्टमध्ये मी ते ब्रॅकेटमध्ये खाली टाकलेले आहेत ऑडिओच्या इथेच. ठीक आहे. सो यू विल बी एबल टू सी दोज वर्ड्स. Yeah, then your conversations will be of two types. If you have conversations will be of two types. Either the student is talking to the professor, okay, or teaching assistant. They are meeting after the lecture. The student will go during the office hours and meet the lecturer and talk about assignments, talk about grades, talk about the difficulties he is facing. Or the second type of conversation will be service encounter with the university staff, where librarian is there, where transport officer is there, or even your residence officer who take care of hostels, correct? They might be there, so student is going and talking to them. So these kind of conversations will be there. All of the conversations are campus based discussions. Okay, this is actual campus मध्ये होतात तसेच. Yeah. Then the topics that you might come across. एक मिनिट, मी चुकीची स्लाइड शेअर केली का? Tell me once you can see my screen, okay?
Yeah, I can see it.
Yeah. हे झालं आपलं. The topics that you might come across will be from arts, and these are for reading also. The topics you might come across will be arts, life science, physical science, and social science. If you want, these are the broader topics that you will get. Okay, the topics from arts background could be architecture related topics, and this goes for your reading also. They might be newspapers, magazines, journal related topics, cave or rock art related topics, city planning, then industrial design or industrial art, literature, music, painters, painting, photography. If you talk about life science, then of course your psychology, your physiology of sensory organs, but very basic. आपल्याला in depth नाही विचारणार आहेत ते इथे. ठीक आहे. They won't ask you something that a doctor should know, so don't worry about that part. Yeah. Then biochemistry, bacteria and microorganisms, whatever is given in the listening passage, based on those only questions will be asked. We just need to pay attention. Then from physical science background, you might be asked about oceanography, astronomy, cosmology, chemistry, desert, electromagnetic radiation, technology of TV or radio, but very basic एकदम in depth नहीं विचारणार ते, and whatever is being presented over there. ओनली थिंग दॅट यू शुड नो की ओशनोग्राफी काय असतं, प्रॉपर्टीज ऑफ लाईट काय असतात. असं नाही झालं पाहिजे की व्हॉट इज दिस, आय डोंट नो, आय हॅव हर्ड दिस टॉपिक फॉर द फर्स्ट टाइम. आय हॅड वन स्टुडंट हू वॉज लाईक व्हॉट इज सायकोलॉजी, आय डोंट नो व्हॉट इज सायकोलॉजी. सो असं नाही पाहिजे, थोडंसं तरी आयडिया पाहिजे की काय असतं हे. दॅट्स वॉट आय वुड से. दॅट्स द रिझन दिस लिस्ट बिकम्स important for us. Anything that you don't know, you can just maybe Google and find out what it means. Okay, कशाची स्टडी असते हे तरी माहिती पाहिजे, अजून काय नाही. ठीक आहे. Then media broadcasting. If we talk about social sciences, then some topics might come from anthropology, business, management, marketing, child development, media broadcasting. असे वेगळे टॉपिक्स असू शकतात. ठीक आहे. Now the question types that we have. I already told you that we might have multiple choice questions, one correct answer to be selected, or sometimes two correct orders to be selected, correct answers to be selected. Now these are the broader questions that we have. First is gist content question, then gist purpose question, then we have detail question, then we have function and attitude question, then we have organization, connecting content, and inference question. Inference, I have already told you what is inference, की कशाचं तरी meaning समजून घेणे, which is not explicitly put forward in front of us. Correct? That's what we need to understand. We'll look at these question types one by one. Yeah, first we have gist content question. Now, understanding the gist of a lecture or a conversation is very, very important for us, because that's what tells us what is the main idea being presented in the listening passage that we have. Correct? Now, the gist of the conversation or the lecture is very implicit. They want, most of the times they want put forward it explicitly ki okay, this is something. But understand this, if it's a lecture, it's very easy to understand. The professor will just go ahead and say, today we will be discussing about, or we will be discussing about listening question types today. So you understand कि आज का topic हमारा listening question type है. Correct? So that becomes your main gist of the passage. Okay, same thing with a conversation. If the student is going and meeting the professor, he will simply say, I wanted to discuss with you about the research paper that I am publishing. Okay, so that is where we grab it. But say by chance you missed out on that sentence, you missed out on that phrase, it's fine. Overall, from the listening passage, overall from the audio, you should be able to guess what it is at the end of it. ठीक आहे, त्यामुळे अडकून नको राहू, एवढं माझं म्हणणं आहे. मेनी स्टुडंट्स व्हॉट दे डू इज दे जस्ट गेट स्टक ऑन दिस क्वेश्चन, अँड बिकॉज दे आर नॉट एबल टू गेट दी जस्ट कॉन्टेंट और जस्ट पर्पज क्वेश्चन, they do not listen to whatever is being followed after that. Okay, don't do that. When the options come on your screen, you will be able to guess what was the gist of the conversation or the lecture. Okay, that is something. Don't get stuck on that question. That's what I'm trying to say. Now, the questions, this is how they will look. What problem does the man have? What are the speakers mainly discussing? What is the main topic of the lecture? What is the lecture mainly about? What aspect of X does the professor mainly discuss? Okay, that is what the question will look like. Now, this content question will ask you about overall content of the lecture or the conversation. Even if you try to eliminate choices that refer to only small portion of what you have just listened to, you should be able to guess your answer. Okay, also sometimes it can be helpful to try to summarize the topic of the lecture or conversations in just one phrase before looking at the answer choices, if you are getting confused with the answer choices. Okay, and don't worry, we are going to practice on it also, so you should be able to guess it. Then we have gist purpose question. Gist purpose question is similar, just the question type changes. The WH question that we are using, question word changes. पहिला आपला question क्या होता, what does the professor mean? Here they are saying why does the student visit the professor. So what's a why होऊन जातो इथे फक्त. ठीक है, so only the focus over here changes. Yeah, why does the student visit the professor? Why does the student visit the registrar's office? Why did the professor ask to see the student? Why does the professor explain X? That is how the question will be framed. Now, say students visit professors during office hours for various reasons. We know that. आपल्यासारखं नसतं. Over there, professors have particular office hours that they need to follow. Okay, you can only meet some professors during say 2 to 4, 11 to 1. You can't walk in any time, and that also you need to take an appointment. Okay, that is something that we should know. Also, in some cases, professor might ask the student to come and visit, okay, to talk about the student's performance or an assignment. Correct? To answer the gist purpose question, we will look at the notes for information that identifies the reason which student is visiting the professor for in the first place. Yeah, the purpose of the conversation is say always not related to the conversation's main topic. Example, today we started the lecture, we talked about, what did we talk about first?
About how was the test?
Exactly, but that was that our main topic of today's session?
No.
No. So even in your student encounter or service encounter passages that you will come across, the audios that you will come across, that is how it might start off also sometimes, because these are just like
Yes. Yeah.
real life. Correct? It's not necessary कि टेस्ट में है इसके लिए वो directly main topic के बारे में ही बात करना start करेंगे. They might just start off with something else. Okay, say the student has come to talk about his recent assignment, he wants an extension on it,
Yeah.
but the student might just enter the professor's office and he might just start talking about the one of the professor who is retiring, and plan say farewell for him. Okay, so they might just start discussing about the farewell party, on what all things are to be done, or what all they can do, and then they might just come to the main topic that okay, I wanted an extension on the assignment. That is where you will need to pay attention. These are called distractors. Okay, they are sometimes they are purposely placed in your lecture to purposely distract you from the main topic. Okay, so that's where you will need to pay attention and be mindful also when selecting the options. Kaila? Yeah, and that happens in real life also, so they have placed the lectures also accordingly. um hmm. Yeah, in your service encounter conversations where the student is talking to, say, the people from the campus, the student is often trying to solve some kind of a problem that he or she is facing. Okay, so here we need to understand what problem the student is facing and how it will be solved. Will it help you to answer the gist purpose question? That's what we need to understand. Okay. Now we'll watch a short video to understand it better, and of course we have one sample question in it also, which we'll try to do together. Okay, pay
Okay.
attention.
Hi, I'm Michael from ETS. Today on Inside the TOEFL Test, we're going inside the TOEFL IBT listening section, specifically the gist content and gist purpose questions. The gist of something is the main point or key idea. In the TOEFL IBT test, gist content questions ask you to identify the main topic or idea of the listening conversation or lecture. Gist purpose questions ask you to identify what the main purpose of the conversation or lecture is. You can recognize gist content and gist purpose questions because they use phrases like mainly about, mainly discussing, why does the student, or what is the main purpose. Here are two things to keep in mind when answering gist content and gist purpose questions. In the listening section, there will always be either a gist content question or a gist purpose question, but never both. This question will always be the first question after listening to the passage. Also, sometimes the lectures and conversations can have two main ideas. In this case, the gist content or gist purpose question may ask you to choose two of the four answer options instead of just one. Let's look at some sample gist content and gist purpose questions. First, we'll listen to part of a conversation between a coach and a student, catching up on what happened while the student was away.
Hi, Elizabeth.
Okay, pay attention and try to make some notes also. Okay.
Hey, Coach. I just thought I'd stop by to see what I missed while I was gone.
Well, we've been working real hard on our plan for the next game. I've asked Susan to go over it with you before practice this afternoon, so you'll know what we're doing.
Okay.
By the way, how did your brother's wedding go?
Oh, it was beautiful. And the whole family was there. I saw aunts and uncles and cousins I hadn't seen in years.
So it was worth the trip.
Oh, definitely. I'm sorry I had to miss practice, though. I feel bad about that.
Family's very important.
Yep. Okay, I guess I'll see you this afternoon at practice then.
Just a minute. There are a couple of other things I need to tell you.
Oh, okay.
First, everybody's getting a new team jacket.
Wow, how'd that happen?
A woman who played here about 25 years ago came through town a few weeks ago and saw a game and said she wanted to do something for the team, so...
So she's buying us new jackets?
Yep.
Wow, that's really nice of her.
Yes, it is. It's great that former players still care so much about our school and our basketball program. Anyway, you need to fill out an order form. I'll give it to you now so you can bring it back this afternoon. I've got the forms from the other players, so as soon as I get yours, we can order. Maybe we'll have the jackets by the next game.
Okay.
Great. And the next thing is, you know Mary's transferring to another college next week. So we'll need someone to take over her role as captain for the second half of the season. And the other players unanimously picked you to take over as captain when Mary leaves.
Wow. I saw everybody this morning and nobody said a word.
They wanted me to tell you. So, do you accept?
Of course.
So an example of a gist content question for this passage is, what are the speakers mainly discussing? And an example of a gist purpose.
Okay, try to answer it.
It is option 3, things that happened while the woman was away.
Okay,
Purpose question is,
let us look at just content question. Okay.
Okay, yeah.
why does the student go to see the coach?
Okay, now see, only the wordings change a bit in both the
Right,
questions
right.
and even in the answers. Okay, to find out what happened and
Correct.
what happened while she was away. Okay,
Right, right.
yeah.
Whichever question is asked, you can figure out the answer by focusing on the main point of the conversation or lecture. The female student tells us her reason for going to see the coach in the early part of the conversation when she says this.
I just thought I'd stop by to see what I missed while I was gone.
That tells us both the main idea of the conversation and why she went to see the coach. So for both questions, the best answer
Okay, easy for you, right?
is C.
Actually, I missed that first line which he mentioned in when he was explaining. So, like, I noted that okay, she missed something, but then the way that conversation went, like the coach was telling all those things. So, based on those points, I was like, okay, this conversation is all about what she missed. So that is how I guessed.
Okay, great. That's how you have to grab it. Even if you miss, you have to grab that information from there. Okay.
Right, yeah.
Here's a tip for improving your listening skills. Listen to academic lectures in English as much as possible. Be sure to listen to lectures in various subject areas: science, social science, business, arts, literature. You can search online for universities that post their lectures for free. Start with short lectures on topics you are familiar with, then build up to longer ones on topics that are not familiar to you. Listen to the same lecture multiple times if you need to. There are lots of ways to improve your English skills. Whatever you
Okay, this was easy.
do,
Next
Yeah.
we have detailed questions. Okay, detailed questions, we understand from the word itself that it will ask you for some details, but understand here we are not asking for very minor details, we are looking at major details. Okay, but again it will be mentioned directly or indirectly in the passage. Okay, and they might just give us some elaboration examples or other supporting responses to it. Okay, in some cases where there is a long digression that it is not clearly related to main idea, you may be asked about some details of that digression also. Now the previous example that I gave, ki the student is there to discuss about extension in the assignment, correct, but they start talking about a farewell of the professor, another professor, correct. So sometimes you might just get question from that professor also, professor के farewell के बारे में also, ठीक है. That's where you will need to pay attention, I would say. Nothing is unimportant in the listening passage, remember that. It's just that it was not main purpose. Okay, now the question would be, according to the professor, what is one way that X can affect Y? What is X? What resulted from the invention of the X? According to the professor, what is the main problem with the X theory? These kind of questions will be there. Yeah. Now, when you are answering these questions, refer to notes that you have made. Refer to those notes. You will not be asked about minor points, I already told you. They won't ask you कि कौन से ईयर में पानीपत की लड़ाई लड़ी गई थी, ठीक है. ऐसे माइनर क्वेश्चंस नहीं आएंगे. पानीपत की लड़ाई क्यों हुई थी, ये क्वेश्चन आएंगे. Yeah, that's where we will need to pay attention. Do not choose an answer only because you feel that the words that you see in those options were there in the lecture. We know that from reading also. The questions will be similar. Okay, the questions won't change. Incorrect responses will also contain the words or phrases that we have heard from the lecture or the conversation. Okay, if you're unsure of the correct response, Decide which is the most consistent with the main idea and use elimination method also. That also works with us. Sometimes the way I told you, just look at the question directly and try to answer it. Okay? If you get confused. If you get confused with the options that you have. That also trick works sometimes. Yeah? Now, let's look at a small video again. In the video, because we have an audio and a sample question also, so it becomes better for us. Yeah?
Hi, I'm Michael from ETS. Today on Inside the TOEFL Test, we're going inside the TOEFL IBT listening section, specifically the detail questions. Detail questions are probably the most straightforward of all the listening question types. They will ask you to remember specific facts about the lecture or conversation. You can recognize detail questions because they include phrases like according to and what is in the question. Detail questions will always ask about an important conceptual detail. You will not be expected to memorize trivial details, such as whether something happened in 1977 or 1978. The answer to a detailed question will always be explicitly stated in the listening conversation or lecture. Now let's look at a sample detail question. First, here's an excerpt from a conversation between a coach and a student who are catching up on what happened.
It's the same conversation, but still listen to it again and pay attention. Okay?
Okay.
While the student was away.
Okay, I guess I'll see you this afternoon at practice then.
Just a minute. There are a couple of other things I need to tell you.
Oh, okay.
First, everybody's getting a new team jacket.
Wow, how'd that happen?
A woman who played here about 25 years ago came through town a few weeks ago and saw a game and said she wanted to do something for the team, so...
So she's buying us new jackets?
Yep.
Wow, that's really nice of her.
An example of a detail question is, who is buying new jackets for the team?
Try to answer it.
It's the former player. C. Yeah.
Again, a detail question will always be a fact that is directly stated in the listening passage. The coach explicitly tells the woman that a former player is the one who is buying the team new jackets, which makes option C the correct answer. Here's a tip to help you practice recognizing important details in a conversation or lecture. Find a friend or study partner and listen to a short audio clip. When it's finished, each of you write down as much as you can remember. Then compare notes to see who remembered more of the important points and supporting details. There are lots
Okay.
of ways.
Now, next over here we have pragmatic understanding questions. These were the basic questions. Now we have pragmatic understanding questions. Okay. Pragmatic understanding questions, they basically test our understanding of certain features of spoken English that go beyond basic comprehension. Something that we are trying to understand implicitly. It's not mentioned explicitly. Okay, these types of question will ask you how you understand the function of an utterance or stance or the attitude of that the speaker is trying to express. So why does the professor say this? ऐसे types of question पूछे जा सकते हैं यहाँ पर. In some instances, pragmatic understanding questions will test parts of the conversations or lecture where the speaker's purpose or attitude is not expressed directly. Okay, in some cases it is stated directly. For example, the professor will mention directly why he is saying something, but in some parts he will not say it directly. We need to understand, we need to make that inference. Okay, that is something जो मैंने एग्जाम एंड टीवी वाला एग्जाम्पल दिया था, if you remember, correct, that your sister, or say I'm your sister, you are watching TV very loudly and I might just come and say I have an exam tomorrow. So what will you do? You will just lower the volume. Correct. Another example could be given over here. If a person is sitting and a person says it is sure cold in here, what will you do? You will go and close the window, because that is the inference that we get, that okay, the temperature of a room is a bit lower and the person is feeling cold because of that. Okay, that's something that we need to make an inference about, that we are trying to understand the functions that go beneath the surface of what is being said or recommended over here. That's what we need to pay attention to. Now, first question that we have, or fourth question type that we have over here, is to be very specific, and first question in our pragmatic understanding question type, that is questions related to understanding the function of what is said. Okay, here we need to understand what function is of whatever the speaker is saying. Okay, this type of question, as I said, they might just give you a part of the audio again or a portion of the audio again to listen to. ठीक है, पूरा ऑडियो एक ही बार प्ले होता है, वी ऑलरेडी नो दैट, बट दे माइट जस्ट गिव यू सम पार्ट ऑफ इट एंड दे माइट आस्क यू व्हाई डज द प्रोफेसर से दिस, what does the professor imply when he sees this, why does the student say this, what does the professor mean when she says this. These kind of questions will be asked to us. Okay, now to answer this question in a better way, we have to remember that the function of what is said may not match what the speaker is directly trying to say. Okay, an administrative assistant asks the student if he knows where the housing office is. She is not, however, doing this to get information about the housing office's location. She is asking for students' understanding whether he or she knows where to go. Okay, that is the reason he or she is asking it. So that's where we need to pay attention and understand. इसका क्वेश्चन टाइप मैंने ऑडियो नहीं इंक्लूड किया है. आई विल इंक्लूड द ऑडियो. इट्स ऑलमोस्ट द सेम फ्रॉम द audio is the same from what we saw before. I was actually editing this PPT, so that's why. Okay, so in the next class we will do that practice of this question type, that is questions related to understanding the function of what is said. Okay, we will stop over here for today because actually I have another class after this. I was I was bit packed today, but I still tried to accommodate your session because we could not meet in the morning, and yesterday also we could not meet. That's why. Okay, tomorrow morning you will be available, right?
Yeah, I'll be available.
So we will meet tomorrow morning, and